You're standing in the kitchen. The room is quiet in a way that feels surgical. No slammed doors, no raised voice, just the low hum of electricity in the walls and the sound of her breathing suddenly too noticeable. She says something sharp meant to provoke, to pull heat out of you. You don't answer. You don't even look up. Your face is neutral. Dill. That's when the shift happens. Her confidence falters. Her body tightens. Not because you're angry, but because you're not. Anger was familiar. Anger meant engagement. Anger meant she could map you, predict you, steer you. Silence offers no surface, no leverage, no reassurance that she still matters enough to disturb you. In that moment, you become unsafe in a way she cannot name. Not violent, not cruel, absent, unreachable, and absence is the one thing her nervous system cannot negotiate with. This is the paradox no one teaches you. Rage keeps you tethered. Silence cuts the wire. What terrifies her isn't your capacity for destruction, it's your ability to withdraw it. You were taught that anger is dangerous, that raising your voice makes you powerful, that intensity equals authority. But beneath that lesson was a quieter lie, that emotional visibility keeps you relevant. Anger, no matter how explosive, is still a signal. It announces presence, it proves investment. It tells her you're still inside the emotional perimeter, still reacting to her gravity. Silence does something else entirely. Silence removes confirmation. It strips away the data she uses to orient herself. No tone to read, no expression to interpret, no emotional temperature to regulate. Her mind reaches outward and finds nothing. And the human nervous system does not fear hostility the way it fears the unknown. Threats can be negotiated. Anger can be managed. Absence cannot. This is the psychological truth most men miss. Anger keeps the relational system alive. Silence starves it. You've seen it play out. When you argue, she stays sharp, almost energized. Her words land with a precision. Her posture is relaxed. She knows where you are. But when you go quiet, when you respond with nothing but calm detachment, something fractures. She fills the space with questions she can't answer. Are you done? Are you pulling away? Are you seeing her clearly for the first time? A single truth cuts through all of it. Attention is the currency, not affection. Anger is attention soaked in heat. Silence is the withdrawal of supply. This is where the emotional shift begins, not in confrontation, in stillness. Your body slows, your breath deepens, the urge to explain fades, and with that internal order comes external destabilization. She senses it immediately. The dynamic tilts. You are no longer negotiating for peace. You are standing inside it. Masculine sovereignty doesn't announce itself. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't persuade. It simply stops participating in games that require reaction to function. Silence is not avoidance. It is selection. You are choosing where your energy is no longer spent. One sentence holds the core. Control feeds on reaction. Silence denies it oxygen. Anger feels dangerous to you because you were taught to fear it, to suppress it, to apologize for it. But to her, your anger is not chaos, structure. It's familiar terrain. When you raise your voice, tense your jaw, explain yourself with force, you're still predictable. Your emotions are loud enough to be tracked. Your limits are visible enough to be tested. Anger tells her one thing with absolute clarity. You are still engaged. Psychologically, anger is a form of participation. It confirms investment. It says, what you do still reaches me, and anything that reaches you can still influence you. She doesn't need peace from you. She needs access. Anger gives her that access dressed as conflict. Watch the pattern closely. When you're angry, she doesn't retreat. She leans in, she argues sharper, she reframes, she escalates. Not because she wants destruction, but because she's calibrated for emotional friction. Friction means the bond is alive. Friction means leverage still exists. Here's the behavioral truth most men miss. Anger validates her position in your internal hierarchy. Even if she claims to hate your anger, her nervous system understands it. She knows where you stand when you're loud. She knows how far to push. She knows the rhythm of your reactions. Your anger becomes a map, and maps are power. Then silence arrives and the map disappears. That's the moment discomfort replaces confidence. Because silence doesn't argue back. Silence doesn't justify itself. Silence doesn't reveal motive. It leaves her alone with her own interpretations, and her interpretations are never neutral. They tilt toward loss. A short truth lands hard here. Anger keeps you legible. Silence makes you opaque. The emotional shift is subtle but irreversible. You stop explaining. You stop correcting. You stop defending your reality. Your body stays relaxed. Your words reduce. And she feels it immediately, not as punishment, but as displacement. You are no longer where she left you. The masculine reframe is simple and unforgiving. Anger is not strength or strength if it keeps you tethered. Familiarity is not safety if it costs you authority. Power begins the moment you stop proving you care through reaction. Silence doesn't mean you've lost control, it means you've reclaimed it. Every emotional system runs on feedback. Signals in, signals out, response, adjustment, control. When you react, especially with anger, you complete the circuit. She pushes, you respond, she recalibrates. The loop stays alive. That loop is not chaos, it's regulation. And for someone skilled in emotional influence, regulation equals safety. Silence breaks the circuit. Psychologically, this is where real destabilization begins. No reply means no data, no facial cue means no reference. No emotional output means her internal model of you starts failing. And the mind does not tolerate blind spots. It rushes to fill them, usually with fear. You've felt this before from the other side, when a message goes unanswered, when tone disappears, when the familiar rhythm stops. The body tightens before the mind explains. That tightening is loss of control registering at a biological level. This is the hidden mechanism. Silence removes her ability to adjust behavior in real time. A behavioral pattern always follows. She tests. Small comments, casual questions, manufactured concern, subtle jabs. Each one is a probe, not to reconnect emotionally, but to restore feedback, to see if you're still there, to see if you still react. If you do, the system repairs itself, and if you don't, anxiety compounds. One sentence cuts clean. No feedback feels like erasure. This is where men often fold. The silence creates tension, and they rush to relieve it. They speak to be mature. They explain to be clear. They respond to prove they're not cold. In doing so, they restore the circuit and hand the power back. The emotional shift happens when you don't. Your nervous system settles instead of spikes. You stop managing her state. You stop correcting assumptions that are no longer yours to carry. You accept being misunderstood because understanding is no longer your currency. Masculine sovereignty begins here, not in dominance, in non-need. You don't require validation of your silence. You don't justify it. You don't weaponize it. You simply allow the absence to speak. Silence isn't passive. It's an environment where manipulation cannot breathe. When feedback disappears, control follows it into the dark. Silence doesn't just remove feedback, it creates a vacuum. And vacuums never stay empty. Something always rushes in to fill the space. When you stop speaking, stop reacting, stop correcting, her mind becomes the substitute. And the mind, when deprived of certainty, does not create peace. It creates threat. This is the psychological truth beneath the fear. Imagination is more destabilizing than reality. When you were angry, she knew what you felt. Even if she didn't like it, she could work with it. Now she has nothing. No anchor. No narrative you've approved. So she writes her own. And that story rarely favors her. You see it in behavior. She replays past moments, scanning for signals she missed. She rewrites arguments, wondering if this silence means finality. She projects possibilities onto you, new priorities, new clarity, a version of you that no longer needs her reactions to exist. Each imagined version reduces her influence. A single line lands here. Uncertainty is where control goes to die. Emotionally, this is where the balance flips. The one who speaks is no longer the one with power. The one who waits becomes heavy. You're no longer chasing resolution. She is chasing stability. And stability now sits with you. This is why silence feels cruel to someone dependent on emotional exchange. Not because it hurts, but because it exposes dependency. Her nervous system has been trained to regulate through interaction. Your withdrawal removes the regulator. Most men misinterpret this moment. They believe silence is punishment. It isn't. Punishment still seeks reaction. Silence seeks nothing. It's not aimed at her, it's rooted in you. The masculine reframe is ruthless and clean. You're not responsible for managing the emotions of someone who learned to manage you. You don't fill the vacuum. You don't soften it. You don't rush to make things normal again. Normal was a system that required your constant participation to function. Silence doesn't create fear. It reveals how much fear was already there, and once the vacuum forms, the dynamic can never return to what it was, because gravity has shifted. Her fear doesn't come from silence itself. It comes from what silence signals at a biological level. Withdrawal of attention activates the same neural circuitry as abandonment. The body reacts before the story forms. Muscles tighten, sleep fractures, appetite shifts. Control mechanisms come online. This is not drama, it's threat response. Psychologically, your silence communicates one thing her nervous system cannot ignore: loss of position. Not loss of love, loss or relevance. Love can be negotiated, relevance cannot. When attention disappears, status is questioned. When status is questioned, fear follows. You'll see the behavior change without warning. She becomes alert, more observant, suddenly sensitive to tone, timing, absence. She may oscillate between softness and sharpness, one moment conciliatory, the next confrontational. These are not contradictions, they are attempts to re-establish footing. Here's the mechanism beneath it. When emotional access is removed, the system switches from influence to recovery mode. A short truth lands hard here, anger keeps her oriented. Silence forces recalibration. She may accuse you of being cold, distant, detached. Those words aren't descriptions, they're alarms. Signals that the usual levers no longer move you. And when levers fail, escalation follows. This is where men often misread intent. They assume cruelty, they assume malice. But the behavior is simpler than that. It's the body responding to loss of control, to the sudden realization that emotional pressure no longer guarantees response. The emotional shift for you is critical. You stop interpreting her reactions as cues for action. You stop repairing discomfort that isn't yours. You let her system experience what yours endured for years, uncertainty without reassurance. Masculine sovereignty is not emotional suppression, it's emotional self-governance. You allow the discomfort to exist without rushing to dissolve it. You understand that peace maintained through constant explanation was never peace. It was management. Silence does not threaten her safety, it threatens her certainty, and certainty was the quiet foundation of her power. Once that foundation cracks, the dynamic begins to invert, not through force but through absence. Silence marks the moment negotiation ends, not loudly, not ceremonially. It ends the way empires fall, when the center stops responding. No more explanations, no more emotional bargaining, no more clarifying your intent so she can position herself around it. Negotiation only exists when both sides need something from each other. Psychologically, this is the most threatening signal of all. Anger says, I still want change. Silence says, I no longer require outcome. And when outcome is no longer required, influence collapses. You'll notice the shift immediately. The language changes. She moves from accusations to questions, from certainty to probing, from dominance to curiosity. Not because she's softened, but because the usual tools no longer work. The system is testing for cracks. Here's the hidden mechanism. Persuasion depends on emotional availability. When you withdraw that availability, words lose their function. Logic loses its target. Emotional appeals fall into empty space. There is nothing to push against. A short sentence cuts through the fog. You cannot negotiate with someone who is no longer negotiating with himself. This is where silence becomes irreversible, not as a tactic, but as a state. You are no longer waiting for her to understand. You are no longer attempting to be understood. Your internal argument has ended, and with it, the external one. Most men confuse this with indifference. It isn't. Indifference still reacts internally. This is clarity. The moment you stop carrying the relational tension as your responsibility, the emotional shift is profound. Your body feels heavier, calmer, less reactive. The need to respond dissolves, not because you're numb, but because nothing is being pulled out of you anymore. Masculine sovereignty enters fully here. You don't threaten departure. You don't announce boundaries. You simply stop negotiating your center. And that silence communicates more finality than any ultimatum ever could. Negotiation ends when leverage ends. Leverage ends when reaction disappears. What remains is gravity, and gravity does not argue. This is the point where silence stops being a response and becomes a posture. You are no longer withholding words to create effect. You are no longer measuring outcomes. You have withdrawn inward, not away. The center of gravity has moved back into you. Psychologically, this is the moment of individuation, the severing of unconscious dependency. Your nervous system no longer waits for emotional cues to decide how to feel, act, or stabilize. You regulate yourself, and self-regulation is unreadable to someone accustomed to managing others through emotion. You'll notice how different this feels from earlier silence. There is no tension in it, no suppressed anger, no waiting for the right moment to speak. The quiet is clean, complete, final. A single truth lands here. Withdrawal is power when it is not reactive. Behaviorally, she senses the difference. The probing slows, the tests lose intensity, the energy shifts from challenge to assessment. She isn't trying to pull a reaction anymore. She's trying to understand the new terrain. But the terrain no longer adjusts to her steps. This is where many men relapse. They mistake her recalibration for growth. They mistake curiosity for respect. And they re-enter, speaking too much, explaining too quickly, reopening channels that had finally closed. Masculine withdrawal resists that pull. You don't harden, you don't perform distance, you don't disappear theatrically. You simply stop orienting your internal state around her presence. Your days fill with order. Your attention returns to craft, body, direction. Not to prove anything, but because there is now room. The emotional shift is subtle and permanent. You feel less urgency, less need to resolve, less interest in outcomes that once felt critical. And in that absence of urgency, you regain authority over yourself. Silence here is not absence of voice. It is absence of need. And need was the final tether. Once it breaks, you are no longer in the dynamic. You are above it. When reaction ends, gravity begins. You don't pull, you don't chase, you don't signal. You simply exist with weight. And everything around you responds to that weight whether it wants to or not. Psychologically, gravity replaces persuasion. Influence no longer moves outward through effort. It moves inward through absence. The less you explain, the more meaning is assigned to your silence. The less you react, the more your stillness is interpreted as certainty. This is where the dynamic fully inverts. She no longer sets the emotional tempo, she adjusts to yours. If she comes closer, it's cautious. If she speaks, it's measured. If she withdraws, it's defensive. Your silence has become a reference point she cannot ignore. A short truth lands clean. The one who needs nothing defines the frame. Behaviorally, you see orbiting, small reappearances, subtle bids for acknowledgement, timing that feels intentional. None of it is loud, gravity never is. It works quietly, without announcement. But gravity is not control. That distinction matters. Control seeks outcome. Gravity allows choice. She can align, destabilize, or exit. All three reveal truth, and you no longer need to intervene to extract it. The emotional shift inside you is calm and dispassionate. You're not waiting for return or departure. Both outcomes feel informational rather than personal. That neutrality is what makes your presence heavy. Masculine sovereignty reaches maturity here. You're not solent to be feared. You are solent because your internal order no longer requires constant expression. Your words, when they come, will be chosen. Sparse, final. Silence is no longer a tactic. It is a byproduct of alignment. And alignment creates gravity the way mass creates force. Without effort, without intent, without negotiation. What once required intensity now happens through stillness. At this stage, silence is no longer something you do. It's something you are. There is no strategy left. No psychological maneuvering. No interest in outcome. The system that once fed on your reactions has nothing to attach to anymore. Psychologically, this is sovereignty. The mind no longer scans for approval. The body no longer braces for emotional shifts. Your internal state stays consistent regardless of external behavior. That consistency is what makes you unreadable and ungovernable. You'll notice how clean this feels. No inner arguments, no rehearsed explanations, no need to correct narratives being formed about you. Misinterpretation loses its sting when you're no longer invested in being understood. A single truth stands alone here. Freedom begins when explanation ends. Behaviorally, the dynamic resolves itself without your involvement. She may soften, escalate, disappear, or attempt a reconnection. None of it requires response. Each outcome speaks clearly. You're not extracting meaning. Meaning is presenting itself. This is where men often expect triumph. There is none. No rush, no vindication, just quiet order. And that quiet is unfamiliar because you were trained to associate masculinity with assertion noise and force. But force is crude. Sovereignty is sunt. The emotional shift completes itself here. What once felt like restraint now feels like release. You are not suppressing expression. You are choosing precision. Words are no longer used to manage emotion, they are used only when necessary. Silence doesn't prove strength, it reveals it. You don't disappear, you remain fully present, just no longer available for manipulation, negotiation, or emotional extraction. Your life fills with direction instead of dialogue, structure instead of reaction. This is the man who cannot be provoked. Not because he is numb, because he is finished. Finished explaining, finished reacting, finished being moved. You return to that quiet kitchen, same walls, same light, same Spissgemberns, but something fundamental has shifted. Not in her, in you. The silence no longer feels tense or unfinished.